It's the January 16th, almost mid-season NBA Power Poll. We're going to go from team number 30 all the way down to team number 1, separated by sections. I'm going to get off a bunch of takes. So going backwards, there's 5 teams that are just openly tanking right now. I'm putting them in the capture the flag territory for Cooper Flag. Get a lot of buzz lately, that Cooper Flag. I don't care if they do 6'7". He's going to be awesome. Washington, 6-32. Charlotte, 9-28. Toronto, 10-31. Utah, 10-29. That's our 30-27 rankings. What's interesting is none of those teams really have an awesome trade piece. Utah has a couple smaller ones, like Sexton's interesting. Clarkson, although he's not having a great year. Brooklyn at number 26 is our big entry for this. They're 14-27. They lost by 59 points last night, and it felt worse. Cam Johnson would be the potential move for them. Pretty decent contract. We've talked about it before on the podcast. It's basically $22 million a year for a couple of years. Could he go to Memphis for Smart and LaRavia and a first and a protected first? Baby. I couldn't find a lot of trades for him because a lot of teams don't have contracts to patch together around that mid-20s stuff. Or if they do, like some of the second apron teams, what they're sending out has to be more than what Cam Johnson makes. It's a little complicated, but Memphis was the one team I was kind of looking at. A fun topic with the Nets is what's Ben Simmons' next contract? Probably minimum. Would somebody get frisky around like July 6th and be like, Ben Simmons, all NBA a couple years ago, and all of a sudden he's making 2 years for 20? Who knows? I really like this draft though, and I'm just starting to get into it. Once football ends, I'm going to throw myself into it a little bit more because it's fun. But Flag, love, 2 Rucker kids, the Lithuanian kid at Illinois. I think there's real stakes, and I think we're going to see some pretty incredible tanking as we go down the stretch. The next category is the pre-tankers, which includes Portland at 25. They're 13-26. If you catch them on the right night, they look pretty good. It's a weird team. They remind me of when you go through like one of those old basketball handbooks or like Basketball Reference and you go to like the 1979 season, you just look at the players on teams. You're like, that's an interesting team. What were they thinking there? They have 3 centers and no point guards and 8 wings. What the hell is this team? That's kind of Portland right now. I also think DeAndre Ayton probably should have played in 1979. Might have been a better year for him. I don't know what this team is. I don't know what the point of it is. And I'm not sure they know either. I don't know what the trades are. Ayton is now untradeable, I think. He's been pretty bad. Scoot is the one they have to figure out if they can unlock as an asset. He had 39 points 2 nights ago. My stockbroker called me immediately. But before that 39-point game was trending toward the most wrong I've ever been about a lottery pick in the last 35 years. And I actually made a list. I went through and I tried to remember guys that I was super high on and why didn't it work out. Going backwards, I think these were the biggest misses for me. Wiseman 2020. Not 100% my fault. Mostly my fault. Not 100% my fault. It was the COVID year. He had barely played at Memphis. Theoretically, he made sense as like this big guy who could pass, who could, it just didn't work out. I don't have a ton of regrets about it like I do with Scoot, where I just thought Scoot was going to be this downhill Russell Westbrook, unbelievable athlete guy, and we just haven't seen it. I have no excuses with Scoot. Wiseman, there's some excuses. Lonzo in 2017, I was super high on, and he just got hurt, so I don't feel bad about that. Jabari Parker, 2014, I really liked. Now, his knees were made of fusilli, so I don't know how much blame I can get for that one, but he will also belong to this different era. He made way more sense in the 1990s and 2000s, what his game was, the scoring small forward who couldn't guard anybody. And then as the league shifted, it's like, is he a 4, is he a 3? So I feel a little bad about that one, but not Scoot level. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist in 2012, I liked him at Kentucky. I just thought he was going to be an incredible 3-and-D guy once he learned how to shoot threes. Guess what? Never learned how to shoot threes. He had some weird elbow thing. His elbow was always like, I forget, it was like a childhood injury or something. He just could never shoot. This one is probably my worst one since Scoot. Derek Williams in 2011. I still don't know what happened here. when you think like where the league was going, 2011, that's right when Curry was starting to blow up a little bit at Golden State. Maybe a year later was when the Curry and the threes started. But Derek Williams on paper, like the perfect stretch four, like just exactly what you'd want. Somebody, good athlete who could rebound and shoot threes. And I don't really know what happened. He went to Minnesota. It just, I'd love to do his career again. I'm not going to admit 100% defeat on it, but I'll admit 90% defeat. Ricky Rubio, 2009. My two favorite guys in that draft were Curry and Rubio. And not in that order, because I liked Rubio more. I thought Rubio was going to be a generational point guard. I was all in. I'm not positive I was wrong. Because, first of all, he goes to that weird Minnesota team. They have 100 point guards. He doesn't come over right away. Right as it's starting to really happen for him on the T-Wolves, Kobe crashed into his knee and he blew out his ACL, and he was never the same. I would love to do his career over again. I still feel like I was right on him and it just didn't happen. So still not as bad as Scoot. And then the last one, Jay Williams in 2002. I think I have a column in the archive somewhere where I thought he was a better pick than Yao Ming. I'm not positive I was wrong. Jay Williams was a really exciting guard. I remember we talked about this he came on my podcast like 7-8 years ago. He was an electric Westbrook Rose kind of athletic point guard that he was definitely something. Then he had the motorcycle accident. We'll never know. So out of all of these, I think Scoot was just the biggest miss for me because I thought athletically, what he was as a downhill guy and as a competitor, I just thought he was going to be awesome. And I missed it. And I'm still holding on his stock. Maybe it'll turn around. 39 points the other night. Not giving up yet. All right. Number 24, Chicago. They're 18-23. Super fun team. Great league pass team. Levine has been awesome. Levine has rejuvenated himself as a trade value asset to the point that if you're ranking him against all the other guys who are definitely available, you'd probably want him the most. You definitely want him more than Beal. So he's 23, 5-5. He's like a 50, 40, 80 guy this year. He's had good games against really good teams. Like he had two really good games against Knicks, really good game against Boston, two really good games against Memphis, a really good game against San Antonio. He's putting up big stats against excellent defensive teams. And I think he's a really interesting trade piece as we head toward the deadline, because I don't know why Chicago wouldn't want to explore trading him. But compared to Bale and some of the other ones, even Jimmy Butler, who you just have no idea where his head's at, I think he's a legit trade asset. I think Vucevic is a legit trade asset. On the other hand, why give those guys away? Like you're going to be a top 10 draft pick anyway, probably. I don't know why I would just be like, yeah, sure, take Vooch for a protected first. I'd rather just keep him and hope his value goes up. Regardless, this is the perfect Jerry Reinsdorf team. They're mediocre. They're fun to watch. They're not in the luxury tax. And keep cashing those checks, Jerry. Next category, we just did the pre-tankers. I'm calling this category the rock and the hard place. Number 23, Philadelphia. They're 15-24. That's really awful. 4-19 against above 500 teams. Yikes. Paul George, he's played 26 games. He's shooting 42%, 2.7 free throw attempts a game. As you know, I love free throw attempts because it tells you is somebody going to the basket or not. He doesn't go to the basket anymore. I'm not sure what he's doing. He was 5.3 free throw attempts 2 years ago. Just in general, looks old. I don't know if this is a phase because he was hurt before the year. Maybe his conditioning wasn't there. Maybe podcasting. Maybe he's proving that podcasting is more grueling than you guys gave it credit for. He doesn't look the same. And he doesn't look the same to the point that I think if Philly called Miami and said, we'll give you Paul George for Jimmy Butler, I don't think Miami does it. I don't think they want any part of 3 more years after this year of Paul George. So he's hit that point already, unless he can show on a basketball court that he's better than that. Because right now we're not seeing it. I didn't like when he complained about playing the 5 when Embiid's out. And he said this is just not that fun for me. You're trying to win games. You're 15-24. Maybe do whatever it could take to make the team better. Rough signing. So you have that. The Nick Nurse thing has gone terribly, and I am not ruling him out for the Amazon NBA studio show next season. I think he's got to be in there. Embiid. This is the big thing. 13 games, 389 minutes this year. For his career, he's missed 404 games now, and he's played 446. So he's edging toward 50-50. I played or I didn't play for my entire career. They had a 4-5 this week. That was the biggest stretch of their season, playing all playoff teams, all really good teams. He missed the first two. We'll see what happens with the others. He's got knee stuff plus a foot thing, and it just doesn't seem like it's going to happen again in the same way. I remember Goldsberry asked me earlier in the year, is he in like a 2008 Shaq stage? Embiid. 2008 Shaq played. He was, I think, third team All-NBA. Embiid doesn't play. And when you miss 404 games over the course of 11 years, yikes. When he did play, offensively looks great, can still get to the free throw line, can still make that little 20-footer at the top of the key, is still big and huge. He falls down all the time, falls down more than ever. I think his fall down per 48 minutes is the highest it's ever been. The thing that was really alarming with him was the Golden State game a couple weeks ago. I'm not sure if you guys saw it, but Golden State was just doing the thing where they just, everybody's cutting and moving and passing and the ball's flying around. They're doing the 2014 Spurs thing. And Embiid was wandering around like a drunk guy outside of the bar and at 2:15 in the morning trying to keep up with it. And if you watch that one game, you would say to yourself, it is impossible to think that this team could win 4 straight playoff rounds, which if they make the playoffs now, they'd have to win at least one play-in game, maybe 2. They'd have to play Cleveland in round 1, right? Then you'd have to play the winner of whoever the 4-5 is, and then the Knicks Celtics would be waiting in the I mean, there's no way. So I was thinking like the Knicks, who they always had this relationship with Embiid, with Leon Rose and Wes, and those were his guys. And it was always like, well, if he ever gets unhappy in Philly, the Knicks will trade for him. Can you imagine if the Knicks went all in for Embiid last summer, and instead of getting Towns and Bridges, they basically took all those assets and just had Embiid? And then what happened with Embiid this year, 13 games, 389 minutes, was happening in New York after they had the super fun team last year? It's a bullet dodge, my friends. Anyway, they are number 23, and I think we can cross them off as a title contender. I'm ready to do that. New Orleans, up to 22. They're 10-32. We knew they would be a what the fuck happened to that team in the West, and they're the team. They had a stretch where their body language was the worst in the league. Their home court, when they do the wide shot, all the seats in midcourt, like maybe 1/3 of them are full. The energy is just super, super, super weird. They should probably be doing everything possible to suck at this point. And yet, when you watch them, which I've watched a couple games, they've turned into a really fun league pass team. Trey Murphy's playing great. Zion's back. Murray's back. They're a good team when everybody's playing. They're not a great team, but they're a good team. You would think they were like a 6-10 playoff seed potentially with everybody. They haven't had anybody, but they're 10-32. And I don't know what the move is, because it's really hard for them to tank when they have as many good players as they do. I mean, one thing they got to get credit for, they just nail their draft pick every year. Like Messi's has a chance to win Rookie of the Year this year. Every year it seems like they hit their pick. Trey Murphy, who they just re-signed, but Hawkins, I like all these guys. And they have a bunch of trade assets. Ingram, $36 million expiring. Zion, 36.7 with outs every year. McCollum, 33 and 30.6. Sorry, CJ, for mentioning you in a trade rumor. Murray, 29.5. They have moves. I just don't know what the move is. And my guess is they'll probably limp along for the next month and try to figure out what they are. And if they keep winning games, maybe start trying to talk themselves into a run at the 10 seed, which would kind of be insane. But what else are you going to do? You have all these good basketball players who are trying to play hard. This is a team to watch. It's a team to watch from a spoiler standpoint, from a trade machine standpoint, and then the Zion piece of it, where he goes away for 4, 5, 6 weeks, whatever it was, comes back and looks really good. and doesn't look fat or out of shape. And you're like, whoa, this is going great. And then the story comes out they have to suspend him because he's repeatedly late to practices and stuff. And you just got this guy just never, ever going to get it. I would still trade for him if I was a team like San Antonio. We'll get to that in a second. Next category, the trade machine heroes. Phoenix, number 21. They're 19-20. Their last 15 games, they're basically 22nd net, 26 defense for points per 100% possessions. This team's just not good. You can talk yourself into, oh, they just got, blah, blah. I don't see it. I watch them play whoever, and I'm very invested in them because this is going to be probably the first FanDuel Super Boost we've lost since 2020. We thought they were going to get 47 plus wins. We thought they were going to shoot a bunch of threes. Priscilla House and I were all aligned on it. And then you watch them and I just don't see it. They can't rebound. They can't protect the rim. The guys don't seem like they like playing with each other. You watch them play a team, I don't know, like pick a bad team. Like they'll play like Charlotte or Washington or whoever. And you're watching the back and forth. And you're like, I'm not sure they're much better than this other team. The league's just really good and really deep. And what's funny, KD and Booker are both over 36 minutes a game, and they've actually had them for most of the year. It's a team that makes more sense on paper in 2017 than in 2025 when you need depth. They just threw away depth. The Beal trade was Chris Paul, Shamet, 2024, 26, 28, and 30 first round swaps with Washington, and a bunch of seconds for Beal. And it was a terrible trade when it happened. I hated it. I thought they left themselves with no outs. I was not a giant Beal guy. And now he's at 50, 53.7, and 57 million for this year and the next two with a no trade clause. And they can't trade him. He knows they can't trade him. I'm not sure he gives a crap. They have Nurkic at 18 and 19. They have Grayson Allen at basically 16 this year and then 3 more years after that. And those are their trade assets. And nobody wants Beal. Nobody. Not one team. I don't know what they do. I do know this. I was thinking about the worst big threes of all time because we did use the big three. I didn't, but we used the big three word with Durant and Booker and Beal. This is up there for worst big three of all time. But I think the answer, as much as I love Steve Nash, is Kobe and Dwight and Nash that one year at the Lakers when people were calling them the big three. And then Nash was like, his body just completely broke down. Kobe hated Dwight. That's probably our worst big three. You could talk me into LeBron and AD and Russ. Some people try to get it going when Russ and Paul George and Carmelo were on the same team that one year. But this is like a possible Mount Rushmore, oh my God, I can't believe we called them the big three kind of situation. It's also another unhappy Kevin Durant team. So we have the 2019 Warriors, unhappy. 2022 and 23 Nets, unhappy. 2024 Suns, unhappy. 2025 Suns, currently unhappy. I'm just flagging it. Maybe it's a coincidence. One more other thing with them. Beal keeps being mentioned in trades as if anyone's trading for him. And it's like, well, Jimmy Butler really wants to go to Phoenix. Cool. You're going to have to trade Kevin Durant or Devin Booker for Jimmy Butler because you're not getting him for Bradley Beal. Nobody wants that contract. Nobody wants Bradley Beal. I think he's the number one trade asset you don't want in the entire league. Sorry, Bradley Beal, but it's true. The Suns are the guy in your fantasy league who texts you and tries to trade you DeAndre Swift for Brock Bowers. Hey, I see you need a running back. What about Swift for Bowers? And you're just like, dude, stop. Nobody wants Beal. Nobody wants Nurkic. It's like, yeah, you're not getting Vucevic for Nurkic and a couple of number twos. Stop. It's not happening. The whole league is annoyed by the Suns. It's a really important point. Everyone in the league's like, Ishbia is just on a bender and this team is insane and stop calling us. Miami at number 20, speaking of Bradley Beal. They're 20 and 19. It's weird. They're in the top half of the league in offense and defense. They're getting an awesome Tyler Hero year, who at the end of some of these games has really been a pretty special offensive player sometimes. You catch a certain Heat game with 2 minutes left and he's just like slicing and dicing somebody. I think that's one of the reasons Butler might not have been 100% happy with this Miami situation, because when you watch him, there's games where Hero just seems like a way better option at the end of games. Bam's offensively is just taking a huge step back, and I don't really know whether it's an aberration or what's going on there, but it's worth mentioning that I don't think he's as big of an asset as he was last year. Maybe it'll come back. But if you don't get a star back in a Jimmy Butler trade, what's the point of this team? Because your top two is Bam and Hero. Congratulations. I don't know where that's getting you with the way the league is now, with how deep and awesome it is. So with Jimmy, no deal works with Houston and Memphis because they don't want him. Dallas or Milwaukee, they don't have anything they could trade back. Sacramento, there's like a DeRozan, Herter, Trey Lyles, or Keegan Murray. But if I'm Sacramento, I don't want to deal with Jimmy Butler and trade for him, and then he's unhappy in Sacramento, and then he's opting in for 50 plus next year. I'm not doing that. Denver, I don't think Miami takes Michael Porter Jr. plus Najee, which I think that would basically have to be the trade. I'm also not sure Jimmy Butler solves whatever issue Denver has, because they're already like shaky enough with 3-point shooting, and then they're going to get rid of Michael Porter Jr. I don't like that trade for anybody. Plus, Denver's playing better. Phoenix, they're not taking Beal. Golden State's not trading Wiggins and Kuminga and other stuff for Jimmy Butler. And if I'm Miami, I'm not trading Jimmy unless I can get Zion in a three-way. I mean, a basketball three-way. Ingram and McCollum together from New Orleans with Butler and Rozier going out. I would consider that. I don't know why New Orleans would do that. Tobias Harris and Tim Hardaway is expiring, plus maybe a protected pick from Detroit. It's a little more interesting because Cade has become a top 20 player in the league. And if you're the Pistons, you could just you basically make a 30 cents in the dollar trade and get Jimmy Butler and hope that he's excited for the next year and a half. Paul George mentioned earlier, no way. And then there's maybe a trade where you just get cap space back. But I thought for sure Jimmy Butler was going to get traded. And then the more I kind of sniffed around, talked to different people, tried to figure out the trades, I don't think there's a trade. So I don't know what happens here. And maybe there's a surprise team like, oh my God, the Pistons traded for him. There's one team coming up later that we'll mention for this. But I'm really having trouble, and I'm the trade machine, Picasso. All right, next category for the power poll is the feel-good upstarts. That can only be the Detroit Pistons. I have them number 19th. They're 21-19. They had a huge bummer with Jaden Ivey getting hurt, which a game that I was actually watching when it happened, in a play that the guy diving for the loose ball goes into the side of somebody's leg that you just think would happen more often in the NBA. It never does. And then when it happens, it's awful. But that was a bummer because they were really starting to figure out something with him and Cade. I really liked when he would come set the pick for Cade and they would kind of do this small man's pick and roll thing. So Cade is basically 24, 7, and 10. And he's 45%, 38% from three. He's going to be on the All-Star team. And he's turned into an awesome asset. And we were unclear the first couple years, especially with the way the team was losing. But I'm willing to redo now my number one pick since Tim Duncan list, where there's 8 definitive no's. You would not take this guy again. Ayton, Fultz, Simmons, Bennett, Odin, Bargnani, Kwame Brown, Olowokandi. I still can't believe Olowokandi went first. The late 90s were unbelievable for basketball content. I really wish I'd had a bigger audience back then. The sort of list, there's 7 guys: Zion, Wiggins, Wall, Bogut, Kmart, Elton Brand. I'm going to put Risa Shea in there too because I like Risa. He's like 19. We have no idea what's going to happen with him. But that's like a sort of, you can see it. There's a case for it. Some of those guys like Zion and maybe even Wiggins, maybe the next 5 years will even boost them into the yes category. And then the yes guy, you would take this again: Wemby, Paolo, Edwards. 3 great ones. 3 great number 1 overall picks there. Anthony Davis, Kyrie, Blake Griffin, Derrick Rose, Dwight Howard, LeBron, Yao. That was 10 the last time I did this. We have 2 additions. I think Karl Anthony Towns is officially a yes. He's been a really good number 1 overall pick, especially the fact that he was part of a really good Minnesota team last year that almost made the finals. And then this year, one of the best 12 players in the league so far. So he's in there. And then I think Cade is a yes now. I think when you think about, did that number 1 overall pick Did that work? Did that kind of work? Did that not work? He definitely 100% worked. So kudos to him. I'm still interested to see what they do with Tobias Harris and Hardaway as trade bait, because you can get to $41 million with them. They also have this $14 million under the cap situation. So there's a lot of fun stuff they can do. And the fact that they're over 500 even without Ivy in an Eastern Conference that has been pretty weird. I'd like to see them do something. All right, next team, Sacramento, number 18. They are 20-20. This team would have been a 3 seed 6 years ago, and now they have a fired coach, and I don't know what the hell they are. They fired Mike Brown. They lost the first game. They won a couple goofy games that they shouldn't have won, and now got the momentum, and now all of a sudden the vibes are good. And it's like, see, that's why we fired Mike Brown. I'm not sure that was the difference. Obviously not in the locker room, but I just think they had some bad luck earlier in the season, and they got some better luck later. Now DeRozan's starting to look better. Fox missed a couple games. I was watching them because House and Sal and I and Hench, we did a parlay over under wins total bet like 3 weeks ago, and one of them was Sacramento under. I think it was like 42 wins, and we were like, Sacramento, this team's falling apart. And then they fired the coach 5 days later, and now it's coming back with Doug Christie, former star of basketball. I don't know what happens with them. I'll tell you this though, there was a moment with the Kings where it felt like they were full Kangs, and you go, they're 13 coaches in 20 years. They had that light the beam season. Then they overextended Sabonis. They did the Barnes extension. Vezenkov, that signing was terrible. They blew the Devin Carter pick. They did the Rosendale, and it's just like, oh, the Kings are back. But now they're playing well, so I don't know. I'm sure their fans are confused too. Interesting play-in team, by the way, because Fox, they're Fox and Sabonis. They have two of the top 25 guys in the league, so I'm not positive I would want to see them in the 8-9 game. Lakers, I have 17th, 21-17. They're still in the bottom 10 in the league on defense. They're in the bottom 5 in the league rebounding. Two things that scare me. There was a Dallas game last week when Dallas abused Austin Reeves to the point that I thought Reeves' corner was going to throw in the towel. And that's the rub with this Lakers team, is that any smart team can just attack them defensively. And it's like, pick your guy. Do you want to attack Reeves? Oh, Connect's out there. Let's attack him. LeBron's decided not to move around on defense today. Let's just start doing back cuts and making him move around. They're just too easy to score on. I like the Finney Smith trade though. And Max Christie's playing better. And I don't dislike the roster. I think they have real issues that are going to surface in the playoffs, but as a regular season team, especially when LeBron plays well or Davis plays well in any given game, it feels like they can beat just about anybody except for like 7 teams. But for the most part, this team, not even close to being a contender to me. It would be a miracle if they won one round. And the LeBron plus minus stuff is pretty strange. Like I did that like a week ago. I looked it up. He had the worst plus minus of anyone who's playing 30 minutes or more in a winning team. It was minus 6.2. It's mostly the defense, but if I were them, if Jeannie Buss asked me what to do, I would tell them not to trade any assets. I don't understand the point of doing that. There's no scenario where they make the finals. No, there's no trade out there that would put them in the finals. So Golden State, number 16, probably in a similar situation. I think the difference is they're in top 5 defensive rating. They have a bunch of tradable stuff, and they desperately need a second scorer. And you could see a world where if they got a second guy who could help out Steph, maybe they become friskier. They're well coached. They have a lot of continuity together. The problem is if you get somebody like Jimmy Butler, you're going to have to give up Wiggins in the trade. Now I'm losing stuff defensively. I'm losing other assets. So the trade that makes sense to me is Vucevic, and it made sense for, I would say, about a month and a half. And it's basically, Looney can be in and he makes $8 million. Moses Moody, put Peyton's expiring in there, or another Kyle Anderson, whatever you need to do. Throw in a pick and just add Vucevic and kind of have him playing off with Curry. I think somebody told me this. Curry's never had a stretch 5 in his entire career. Every guy in the league has played with somebody, a 3 who could make a 3, and he's just never had it. Curry's at an interesting point in his career because like they've cut his minutes down to like 31 minutes a game. His per 36 is still right around where you want it to be. Like his 26 a game, 45%, 42% from three. But I did my Ringer 100 and I couldn't justify putting him in the top 10 anymore, at least right now. It could change in a month. But if he's your best player on a team and the supporting cast is solid, you're just not a contender. So when I did my top 100, I had Jokic first, Giannis second. I put Shea third, Tatum fourth, Luka fifth for now because he's hurt and there's durability stuff with him that I'm not positive about. I have Wemby sixth, Davis seventh, Mitchell eighth, Brunson 9, Edwards 10, Curry 11. And Curry versus Edwards and Brunson, I think, is the big question there. But those guys are just more reliable night to night at this point. Curry's 36. It's just the way it is. If it was one game with my life on it, it's a different question. But if we're talking about a regular season, I don't see how he's in the top 10 right now. That could change. Next category, the young and funds. Oh, by the way, with Golden State, this is not the Jimmy Butler team for me. Not worth it. The young and funds. I only have one team in this, Atlanta. I have them 15th, 21 and 19. They got Trey going a little bit. We talked about Trey like a month ago. He's up to 23 a game, 12 assists. His shooting percentages are up a little bit. And he's had some good games when other guys weren't playing. You can kind of see, oh, this is a game I get to shoot 33 times. I still really like this team as like a stealth. You'll beat them in round one, but it's probably not going to be that easy. Their 3-point shooting is the thing that's been really hurtful to them. Daniels 31%, Reese Shea 28, Jalen Johnson 32, Bogdanovich 34, not as high as he used to be. I'm still in on these guys, and they've never had all their guys together for more than like 2 weeks. So when everybody comes back, I don't think they're a trade team to try to get a better asset. But I think they're going to be like around 44, 45 wins. That's where I have them penciled in, just because the East is going to really start tanking. That brings to the next category, secretly scary round one opponents. You could talk yourself into Atlanta being there, but Indiana number 15, definitely. They're 22 and 19. They're 11th in pace this year. They were second last year, so they're a little slower. I think that's Siakam related. They're 9th in offense this year. They were second last year. But the last 15 games, they're 4th in offense. They've had no Neesmith for 35 games. Halliburton's had a weird year, and every time it seems like he gets going, something happened. He just hurt his hamstring. In general, I like this team, and I like what I've seen from Walker the last couple of weeks from them. I want to see this team in March. This team is like a pause button. Let's see what you look like on March 10th. And then San Antonio is the other team like that. They're 19 and 20. They're always hanging around these games, and they haven't quite figured out how to close them. I think last night was a really good example against Memphis, which was an awesome game. They played the most fun game of the season against Denver a couple Fridays ago. That was the Wemby is officially here. We knew he was already here, but he's officially here now game where Jokic praised him afterwards and talked about how he was generationally special. Really cool moment. Wemby's 25, 11, 4 assists, 4 blocks a game. Their defense is 6th in the last 15, which is why you have to consider them a scary playoff team. Wemby, we should have a different Defensive Player of the Year award now because he should just get it every year. We should actually have the number 2 guy should get a separate award. Nobody's ever winning this award again until Wemby is like 35, assuming he stays healthy. I was talking about him with somebody yesterday. He's a foot longer than everybody realizes when they're playing. And over and over, one of the most fun things about watching him is every game, there's 4 or 5 moments where somebody is in the paint and they think they're going to get him, or they think they're going to shoot a floater, or they think they're going to get a layup past him. And they just forget he's got this extra foot that his body goes up. And they're always like, oh, and even as they're shooting it, he's going up and they're realizing mid-shot, oh God, he's going to block this. And they can't stop it because their body is already committed to it. But the fact that he's growing like he is, which is not surprising. And then Castle has shown some some stuff like he did last night against Memphis. Castle, I think the second half of the year is worth watching as what's his ceiling. This is a terrifying round one team. I don't want to see Wemby in a series, period. Like there was a play last night in the fourth quarter where he ended up with the ball on the left side of the foul line where if he turned into the paint, he could have shot a jump hook. And he never goes there. He's always around the 3-point line. They always run stuff with him 25 feet from the basket. And in this play, he had the ball because a play broke down and they gave it to him at the top of the foul line. And the other team immediately panicked. The point guard came down and doubled him. Then he turned into the lane. The third guy came in. So now he's being triple teamed. And then somebody back cut and he was able to pass the guy and get a layup. And it made me think like when he realizes that the foul line is where he needs to be, that's his spot. The same way Nowitzki realized it, the same way Duncan figured out his spot. I talked about this with Kirk Goldsberry a couple weeks ago. What are his spots on the floor? That left side of the foul line where he can turn and he can either shoot a little 15-footer or he can put his head down into the paint, jump hook, or pass to a cutter, but everything is coming with his right hand. He can hold the ball up like it's a fucking grape. That's the key to Wemby, I think, going forward. If he figures out that spot, plus he has the top of the key and the ability to shoot threes, those two things combined, I just think he's going to be an absolute bitch in the playoff. And I'll tell you something else. This is the number one, holy shit, I can't believe they traded for Jimmy Butler team, where the Spurs just say, fuck it. We have, this guy's the sixth best guy in the league. Maybe we should see what's up. Would they do that with their culture? I don't know. This is also a holy shit they traded for Zion team, which if I was the Spurs, that would be the guy I targeted. Bring him into our organization, our culture, put him with Wemby. Now this is the most terrifying circle on anyone's schedule. It's like, oh my God, we have to play Wemby and Zion today. All right, next category, puncher's chance. Minnesota, I can't rule them out yet. They're 21-19. I have them 12th. They're up to 5th in defense. They were first last year, but now they're 5th, so that's better. Here's the thing. They finally realized something that I've touted on this podcast many, many times over the years and in my column, and it's something I just instinctively believe in. Just play your best 5 guys. Stop worrying about positions. Oh, we need somebody who's... People always do this with point guards where it's like, well, that guy looks like a point guard. Mike Conley, Godspeed, great career. Really enjoyed him. Incredible teammate. Everybody loves him. It's over. It happens. This is what happens to point guards. He's done. It's a wrap. So they realized a couple weeks ago we should just play DiVincenzo and not have a point guard. And DiVincenzo is reinvested and has been playing really well, and they're playing better. There's a Conley with Randall where that can get them to about $43 million. They'd have to take somebody back who makes less than that. I don't know if they'd even trade Conley. There's no trade for him straight up because he's got another year after this one. But there's still a move with them. And part of that move has to be maybe get Julius Randle out of here. The thing with the Towns trade, which I think has just worked out horribly for them. And this was the worst case scenario of the trade, which was that it boxed them in. Nobody really wants Randle. No, now they had to re-sign Conley. Nobody wants him. But it was a financial trade. And it's yet another reason why Glenn Taylor is one of the 5 worst NBA owners we've had. The move to trade Towns and then extend Gobert to try to get him on a cheaper deal was just a fucking double whammy. Like, you can't bounce back from that. And the lesson, as always, is A-Rod is a loser. The sleeper, number 11, Orlando. They're 28th offensively. There's only 2 teams in the league worse per 100 possessions than Orlando. And yet, they're 4 games over 500. Their defense and their camaraderie and their feistiness and their competitiveness has just carried them in all these games. Their opposing rebounding, they're first. Teams are only 40.6 rebounds a game against them. So they're dominating the boards. They're great against the 3. Teams are 31% against them with the 3. And they get steals. They get all this stuff. The zombie magic. Unfortunately, they can't shoot and they can't score. Paolo came back. Franz is eventually coming back, and nobody wants to play this team. They're 6 seed, 7 seed, 8 seed. I don't want to see them. If the Celtics are the 3 seed and Orlando's 6 seed, I'm bummed. That's a really hard team to play. It did make me think, though, this is a good example of NBA depth being deeper in a significant way than it was 13 years ago. You're talking about players like 75 to 300 are so much better than they were in the early 2010s. Like they have De Silva. Oh, let's just throw him in. He can. He's not even playing now. He's in there, and we're going to him in crunch time. Batadze, I think that's how you say his name. Isaac, Cole Anthony, Anthony Black. These guys are all good. I was looking at the 2012 Celtics, a team that was up 3-2 in the Eastern Conference Finals with a chance to go to the finals. This was their 5 through 10 guys in that series. Michael Pietrus, Brandon Bass, Keon Dooling, Marquise Daniels, Greg Steemsma, and Ryan Hollins. That was our bench. The league is way better now. Number 10, the Clippers. Still can't get a feel for if this team is a contender or not. They're the league's best coached, solid team. The bottom 7 offense, top 5 defense. They have a pretty good home court advantage now. They have Kawhi, at least at the point where I'm interested to see where it is in March and April. They have this Norm Powell jumping from 14 points a game to almost 24 at age 31, which I think we need a new award. I would get rid of clutch player. I never know how to vote that. I would replace it with the Tommy from Goodfellas. Look at this fucking guy. That would be my award. And Norm Powell would win because I have no idea how we went from 14 to 24, but we did. Harden is interesting because on the one hand, he's one of the reasons that they've overachieved. On the other hand, a lot of his best games seem to come against shit defenses or mediocre teams. And then the worst games, if you really watch carefully, it's like against Houston, OKC, San Antonio, Boston, Minnesota. So there's some fool's gold with the Harden pace, 35% from 3, 44% on 2s. He seems like he's the same, but he's not. He can still give you a good quarter, but not a whole game. And they really need Kawhi back for me to take them seriously. So that's the last non-contender for me until we see with Kawhi. All right, next group, definitely lurking. Milwaukee, I have them 9th, 21 and 17. They still have Giannis. That's it. They're shooting threes way better than I think anyone expected. They're in the top 3 there, really good in corner threes. And I don't want to see them in the playoffs if that's okay, because that's the 3-6 possibly if it's Boston, Milwaukee. I don't want to see Milwaukee. I don't want to see Orlando. Actually, the way Boston's playing, I don't want to see anybody. But they're lurking. Dallas is lurking. I'm not willing to make any sort of big judgment with Dallas. Luka's missed 19 games. Kyrie with some back stuff that's a little scary because he's been in the league for a while and he's a guard. And I always worry about aging guards hitting their early mid-30s. This is a let's see in March team for me. Also, not a lot of moves, but Luka turns 26 next month. Just pointing that out. Usually you have your apex season, age 27, age 28. So we're in range, and it's not this year, but it's a wait and see team for me. Then Houston, number 7. You could talk me into Houston being 5th. You could talk me into them being 12th because I don't think there's an extra gear. I think they're here, and they're here every game. And when we get to the playoffs, they're still going to be here. They don't have the ability to do this because offensively, it's just too choppy. They're really keeping their fingers crossed with Jalen Green now. I watch a lot of Houston. I really, really, really like watching Houston. We talked about it. We're going to talk about it with Joe Anderson in a second. But the Jalen Green piece is the piece. 43% field goal, 35% threes, 2.6 assists, 4.2 free throw attempts. I'm just reading those stats because this is your crunch time guy. And the odds are he's not going to score or create a shot from somebody else in the biggest moments of the game. So that's one. At least not yet. He's young. Maybe it's in there. And then Van Vliet's the other one, who's 15 points a game, 6 assists. His clutch numbers are probably the worst in the league. And those are kind of their 2 options at the end of games. So it just turns into a rock fight. And the rock fight recipe, they're 3rd to last in 3-point shooting, 28th. They're 1st in rebounds. And it's just you watch the last 5 minutes and it's like watching 90s basketball again. So, Could they turn Van Vliet and a bunch of stuff into Fox? I don't think Sacramento. If I'm Sacramento, I'm not trading Fox, but that's the only way this changes, I think. Otherwise, I'm fine. Joel and I talk about it in the next segment. I'm fine with Houston. Just, hey, this is great. We're a top 4 seed. Let's see what happens in the playoffs. Let's see if Jalen Green has another gear. Let's see what Şengün can do. Jabari Smith. Let's just see what this looks like for a year, and then we'll decide in July who we are. I think that's the move. The contenders. I have 6 contenders. Number 1 is Memphis, who's top 7 offense, defense. Brandon Clark's back. Angry Ja's back. Dunking on Wemby last night, even though it didn't count. Still fun. Their bench is just, I've never seen anything like this bench. Brandon Clark, Huff, Aldama, Wells, Kennard, Edey, Laravia, Pippen. I mean, not sometimes a couple of those guys will start, but they just can survive an injury to anybody in the team for a week, and you don't even notice. The Laravia contract was weird, where they did the Jalen Smith thing, didn't renew it, and now I guess he's a trade piece, but he's playing really well. I want to shout out Wells. I used to do when my fingers worked and I had a column, I used to have my Bill Simmons All-Stars for random guys in the league I just love. I love Wells. Wells, watch Memphis and watch if the other team has, a really good swing. And Wells is a lot of times the guy guarding the swing and really being a pain in the ass. But that guy, there's something there with Wells. And that's why when you think about, like, I've heard Cam Johnson mention with them, and they could easily trade Marcus Smart and Laravia for Cam Johnson, throwing some picks and improve that Marcus Smart stuff. I would want to see what I have with these guys for another couple weeks before I think about a trade. And the team seems like they have good chemistry. They really like each other. There's a regular season versus playoffs conundrum with them, that the team in the regular season is perfect with the depth, but in the playoffs, when the same team is seeing you 6-7 times in 2 weeks, is there an extra gear? It's the same issue Houston has. Morant plays 3, DNP, plays 5, misses 8, plays 1, DNP, plays 5, DNP, plays 2.5, gets hurt, DNP, plays 3, misses 5. He's just not on the floor enough, and that's why it's the hardest to take them seriously when we have to think about, can they win 4 straight playoff runs? We do not have evidence that Morant can play for 2 months in a row. So until we do, I have them as a pseudo contender. I do want to mention Jaren Jackson's been awesome this year, and I loved watching him go at Wemby last night. He's one of those guys who, when he's going against Sabonis, Davis, Wemby, like, you really could see him being like, I'm taking the challenge tonight. Denver, number 5. Let's go. Jokic, 24-16, 4th in offense. Their 3-point shooting is still abysmal. They're bottom 3 in the league, but Murray is starting to show signs. As always, online criticism works. No, TV criticism, maybe that works, but Murray does look a little bit better. Jokic has been, they're 25 plus points better when he's out there versus when he's not out there. The Wemby Jokic battle 2 Fridays ago was the highlight of the year. He's doing stuff offensively that doesn't seem conceivable. It seems like it's out of like the 1962 season. And right now, I don't think he's the MVP because of what SGA is doing and what he means to that OKC team. But what's changed is now they're a top 4 seed, and whatever happens these next 2 months, maybe he can play himself into that combo. They have a GM and coach that famously doesn't seem great. I've heard that they don't talk. I find that hard to believe, but it's the worst kept secret in the league. There was a thing where they presented Malone with some sort of Wednesday, and Calvin Booth is the GM, and he presented this jersey, and I was like studying the clip because I was like, I thought these guys didn't interact. I love that Russell Westbrook is relevant on this team. And they really needed him. They needed him when Murray was kind of, flaming out a little bit there for a while. They needed him in days when Aaron Gordon, when he got hurt they just needed his energy, his rebounding, how weird he is, the fact that he just puts up stats. And he's been really good for them. Like, I think he's been way outkicked his coverage of what they ever could expect with Westbrook. But I wrote down, putting him on this Jokic team, I'm not sure if it's like Daniel Day-Lewis in an Apatow comedy or Will Ferrell in a Paul Thomas Anderson movie. But it's so weird, I'm kind of into it. It's just constantly weird. There's a lot of no Russ shots with like 3 minutes left where he just decides I'm going to take this corner three. But he plays really hard, and it really seems like Jokic likes him. So I think he's been a bonus. I think he's kind of saved them in some respects because he's not afraid and he puts up stats. Number 4, the Knicks. The Towns trade is just amazing. Just an incredible trade. I know their defense dropped, but just when you think like the 2 assets they gave up versus the one they got back and how great he's been, it's an amazing trade. 25 and 14, 55%, 45% from 3. Really has a chance if we were doing the old school center forward guard for All NBA. Really has a chance to be second team All NBA. Might make second team All NBA anyway. I think I'd rather have him than Anthony Davis at this point, as crazy as that sounds. He's younger, and I just think he's more impactful day to day. The Tibbs stuff is the thing to watch. The minutes that he's putting on these dudes. Last night, overtime, Hart played 49 minutes. Brunson's playing 40 plus minutes in really hard games and also doing 2/3 of the stuff offensively. And I just feel like he's going to burn these dudes out. And as a Celtics fan, this is where I take my basketball analyst part out. Just as a Celtics fan, please, Tibbs, continue to play these guys 40 plus minutes a game. Thank you. The Celtics, number 3, 28 and 12, second offense, 6 defense. Started out 16 and 3. They're 7 and 7 in their last 14 games. So what's going on? Well, you win the title and it could go one of 2 ways. Either you have a huge chip on your shoulder and it's like, we got the bullseye, come get us, and you just kick everyone's ass. That would be like the 92 Bulls. Or then the more typical way it goes is you got a little bit of an on-off switch. You feel like you can still turn it on and it's going to be there when it needs to be there. The Celtics had a road trip the other night where the first 2 games were Houston and Minnesota, and they just played really well. And it was one of those road trips where it's like, all right, we still got it. And then they immediately fell apart after and lost some games. They're losing games at home. They're not shooting nearly as well. Like last year, they were 39% on threes and 49% just field goal in general. So very close to where Cleveland is this year. This year, they're 46 and 36. So it's not dramatic, but it's a little dramatic. It's 3 points a game. They don't rebound as well as they did last year. They were second in rebounding last year. They're 9th this year. Tatum has a way bigger rebounding burden than he used to. And then and White has just really fallen off the last 20 games, and I think he's hurt. And I think he's been hurt for a month plus. And I just think he's playing hurt because he was incredible the first 5 weeks, and he has been. Drew's older. Drew is a little more hit or miss than maybe he was last year. I'm still not worried. But what worries me is this. Last year was a cakewalk to the finals. It wasn't their fault. It was just the way it played out. If they fall to a 3 seed, potentially that's Milwaukee or Orlando in round 1. Milwaukee is Giannis. Orlando potentially defensively could be a real issue for them, especially if you watch the stagnant Celtics offense lately. Knicks round 2, not having home court. Cleveland round 3, no home court. It's like night and day compared to last year. So there's stuff, KP's just coming back in a real way. Tatum's been stupendous. He's 5th in scoring, 18th in rebounding, plays his ass off every night, plays defense. He's just a top 5 guy in the league by any calculation. Jalen shooting numbers are down. So it's all little stuff. And I'm willing to say it's more in the camp of we won last year. We're kind of hibernating until the playoffs. I don't love it though with the younger team, and I don't love the White stuff at all. I want to really know what's going on with him. The schedule is rough. They really need that 2 seed. And if I'm the Knicks, I'm playing Jalen Brunson and Hart 48 minutes a game trying to get that 2 seed. I think that's what they should do. Wink, wink. Cleveland, number 2, 34 and 5. First offense 10. They're basically the 2024 Celtics. They've basically recreated what that Celtics team was. They're 50% on field goals, 40% from threes. They can play defense. The Celtics had those 2 forwards that were a huge mismatch for everyone, Brown and Jalen. The Cavs more have that same thing with the guards, with Mitchell and Garland. What's crazy is they really, really, really played the minute stuff well. Mitchell's 31 a game. Mobley's 30.5, Garland's 30.3, and Allen's 29. And what's that record? 34-5. Those guys are sitting for 1/3 of every game. They're killing teams. And it's very similar to Boston last year. And I said this a couple weeks ago, I'll say it again. I take them really seriously. I do not think this is a regular season team. I think they're really good. And I think Mitchell is ready for a bigger moment. And Mitchell might, if you're doing a draft of all the guys this year, when we get to the playoffs, who might have started here and went up to here, like Jaylen Brown last year, Mitchell's the number one candidate. And I would have Wemby number 2. Just while we're here, things you're not allowed to say on pregame shows about Cleveland or OKC anymore. People got to start talking about SGA. We're talking. People got to start realizing how good Donovan Mitchell is. We know. People got to start talking about Jalen Williams. We are. People got to start talking about Evan Mobley. We are. People got to give more props to the job Sam Presti has done. We have. People got to take OKC more seriously. We are. They're the favorites on FanDuel. Which takes me to OKC, the favorite, 33-6. First in defense by a lot. This is one of the great defenses, regular season-wise, anyone has put together. They force turnovers at an absurd rate. Everybody seems to say the only real weakness they have is opponents can rebound on them a little bit. They've shown the ability to come back in games from double digits. They did against Minnesota and the Clippers and the Knicks and the Celtics, which I think is significant. Chet, I don't know when he comes back, but they're doing all this without Chet. And when Chet comes back, this becomes a nightmare team. I don't think they make a trade. My guess is they don't. And if they made a trade, they'd probably try to improve the Wiggins spot or the Isaiah Joe spot. And I just don't think Presti rolls that way. If you go back and you look at the KD Russ Harden era, Harden was really the only trade he made during a 5-6 year stretch. He did the Jeff Green Perkins. That was pretty early before they made the finals. And then he did the Harden trade, which was a financial trade. But for the most part, he's a continuity guy. And I think they roll with what they have. Their playoffs could look like round 1, maybe it's San Antonio, maybe it's the Lakers, maybe it's the Kings or the Warriors. Round 2, Denver or Dallas. Round 3, Memphis or Houston. No, I don't see anybody beating these dudes. And the biggest reason is SGA, who has out-alphaed the following guys head-to-head just this season. 45 against Harden, 45 against Halliburton, 40 against Ant, 39 against Luka, 36 against LeBron, 35 against Curry, against Boston and Tatum. He did 33, 11, and 6. Played the Knicks twice, 39 and 33. Best player in the league this season. He's got to be the MVP because he's meant the most to the best team in the league. Now, you could say, well, why didn't we do this with Tatum last year? He's just been more impactful day to day than Tatum is. And I can't believe this is the guy I watched as a kid on the Clippers as a rookie. I never in a million years would have thought that this would become one of the best, most creative scoring guards I've ever seen. Him and Brunson, watching those guys just over and over again get the shots they want and create the shots they want against these defenses that are designed to stop them is pretty nuts. Is it going to work in a series? It really depends on Jalen Williams. That's going to be it. It's because at some point during a 7-game series, you're going to try to take out SGA and you're going to send second guys at him and you're going to make other team and you're going to make the 3-point shooting beat you. And you're going to put the ball in the hands of Jalen Williams. And you're going to say, you know what, dude? Go for it. If you beat us, so be it. And from what we've seen of him in the playoffs last year and even in the NBA Cup this year, I'm not positive he can do it, but that's the play against them once we get to the playoffs. They're the best team in the league. I think they have a legitimate chance at 70 games because of their depth, 70 wins because of their depth. So could they get to 70-12, 71-11? It's possible because night to night, game to game, with how good their defense is and their scoring and their 3-point shooting, I think they can get there. Anyway, that is our half-season power poll.